Hello, everyone, and welcome to Project Insight's Agile webinar. Today's topic is I'm a Scrum Master. How do I facilitate team engagement for success? So just a few things to know before we get started. All participants will be on mute. However, any questions you have are more than welcome. Please type them into the questions box, which you can find on your GoToWebinar dashboard. All of our PM and Agile webinars are valid for one PDU free of charge. However, you must be in attendance for the full session. PDU certificates will be sent by the end of the day, so please hold off on emailing us about your certificate until then. For those interested in the recording and slides, they will be sent via email by tomorrow. You can also find them within our Project Insight community. My name is Alexa, and I'll be your moderator for today. I'm on the marketing team here at Project Insight, and if you have any questions, comments, or feedback, please feel free to reach me at alexa.ortega-mendoza@projectinsight.com. If you're not familiar with us, Project Insight is a professional project and portfolio management software for project-driven organizations that need high-performing features combined with ease of use. PI provides a better way to deliver optimal performance at a lower cost within a central platform. Gain end-to-end visibility into the workloads of resources, project budget, and status with real-time reports. If you'd like to learn more, please feel free to contact us via phone, email, or request your free customized demo at projectinsight.net. We'd like to give a warm welcome to our presenter today, Dr. Dave Cornelius. Dr. Dave Cornelius is a value delivery leader at BioRad Laboratories. He influences cross-functional teams to deliver amazing quality products to delight customers. Dr. Dave is the founder of the 5 Saturdays program that empowers high school students through agility and innovation by providing learning experiences in technology and lean business. He is the author of the book Transforming Your Leadership Character, The Lean Thinking and Agility Way, and innovator of the game Agility Leadership. Dr. Dave produces a podcast on iTunes and Google Play titled Null Share with Dr. Dave and can be found hosted on grokshare.com. With that, let's learn something new and exciting that you can use at work immediately. Go ahead, Dr. Dave.
Well, boy, I was about to say buenos dias. Hi, Alexa. Sorry. Well, welcome. Welcome. Okay. Goodio. Let me get down to the screen that I need to be so I could begin. So let's just go ahead, and I would like to say everyone who's attending today, welcome. I hope you guys are having a great day wherever you are. And we're going to talk about the role of the Scrum Master. And so let me just give you some insights into the Scrum Master's role. And we can think of the Scrum Master, and they facilitate the team practice of lean thinking and agile tenets by using the Scrum Framework. You know, while operating in this role without authority is difficult, can lead to questions of worth to the value delivered. The Scrum Master role is important for the outcome of team harmony and to enable self-organization. You know, people with diverse skills work in this role and do not necessarily have to be a domain expert in any specific discipline. So, for example, the Scrum Master does not have to be a technical expert to help a software team use Scrum to be successful. The key is the facilitation skills that enables flow between the Scrum ceremonies and activities during the development of a product. Fundamentally, if the Scrum Master demonstrates the attributes of a servant leader, the team receives greater value. One thing that I want to tell you and to be aware of is that the Scrum Master is not a project manager. You know, however, a person with project management training may participate as a Scrum Master, but must pursue the ways of a Scrum Master, much like a Jedi must pursue the way of the Force. Well, welcome. Scrum Master provides great value to each product, and the key things that they're involved with is removing impediments that blocks the team from success. Part of their effort and activities is to help the team engage in ceremonies that are of value. So they do daily stand-ups, they do sprint reviews and retrospectives, just to name a few. They protect the team from distractions and complacency, and they help the team use Agile values and principles as a guide. So in our topics today, we're going to cover the Agile values and principles. We'll talk about the Scrum Master and the value that the Scrum Master provides to the team and the organization. They have also very key support activities that helps the team to be self-organizing and really optimize themselves. So learning objective, we'll talk about some of the Scrum framework so you can see what that looks like. If you've never seen Scrum before, this is just going to be a high-level insight for you. We'll get into the Scrum Master's role and how they help the organization and teams to really achieve the maximum output. And finally, it's just the benefits of the Scrum Master as a role. So there's 4 values that the Agile principle really stated about. They really wrote this in 2001. And so they have 4 core values, and they talk about individuals and interactions over processes and tools. They look at working products over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, and responding to change over following a plan. So now, the interesting thing is that the word over, and so in essence, what they're saying, that is, while there's a value in the items on the right, which is to the right of over, we value the items on the left more. Now, this is very important because in traditional project management, we look at more for processes and tools versus the importance of individuals and interaction. We try to set up more contract negotiations versus trying to collaborate more with our customers. And we set up a big project schedule and we try to follow that as opposed to being able to respond to change in a very dynamic way. And yes, heavy documentation over working products. So one thing I want you guys to not miss in this is that even though there's a context that says we value the items on the left more, it does not mean the items on the right are diminished. They're just not as important. I just want to make sure that we get that point across and everyone kind of understands that. So also there are 12 huge principles, which I think I'm not going to read all of them. I'll just probably just talk about the ones that I think that I like to hold on to, that are, to me, I think is the most important. And I think all of them are really important, but I think that the things that really stand out to me when I look at these 12 guiding principles is that principle number 5, where we support, trust, and motivate the people involved. And looking at that from a Scrum Master, that's really important to bring that forward. Now, principle number 8, where agile processes support a consistent development pace, where we could have a sustaining pace of work without getting burnt out. So, and the number 10 is also really important in terms of simplifying things in a context that we could get things done without creating too much difficulties in getting things done. And I like number 12 as well, which we look at regular reflection on how to become more effective. So continual learning. So if I had to pick 4 out of the 12 principles, I like number 5, number 8, number 10, and number 12. And, you should go to, you should look this information up on and look for the Agile Values and Agile Principles. If you get a chance, just to read about it and see what's out there, how many translations they've done in other languages throughout the world as well. So the Scrum Framework, when we think of it, I think of it in a simple way, much like Deming did. I changed it to say plan, do, inspect, adapt, as opposed to plan, do, check, act. This is really where we could begin to understand that the teams are making commitment to get work done, and really everyone in the team has a voice and they contribute to the outcome. So the way it works is that we begin by, if you were at my webinar last time, we talked about the product owner. So we begin with the product owner planning and prioritizing a backlog of work, where you can see the product backlog over here with the stickies. Now, at this point, now the product owner and the Scrum Master and the team, they get involved and they start to discuss about what work can they commit to within a given period of time. And when we think of sprints are normally about 2 weeks long, but the recommendation is between 1 to 4 weeks in duration. The most common is 2 weeks. And so the team spend time discussing the prioritized work and decide. They decide based on the priorities, what can they get done based on their capacity, their available capacity. Then they get into the cycle of making sure that they could execute and deliver the value that the customer needs. At the end of it, they come back and they inspect and adapt. And so if you notice that number 4, we talked about inspect and adapt, would really correlate to us taking time to reflect. The principle number 12, to reflect on the work that gets done. So you can see these key 4 activities help the team, and the Scrum Master helps to facilitate this to ensure that they can provide the greatest value to customers. So they plan and prioritize, they discuss and commit, they execute and deliver, and inspect and adapt. Now, the Scrum Master provides some great values to the team. They help teams use the Scrum Framework. And we just talked about the framework that we just demonstrated, where we have a prioritized backlog to remove impediments that block teams from success. And so there are many impediments when you have a team trying to build software or even build any product, where if they have interactions with others, there's work that needs to be done. We look at number 3, where they facilitate ceremonies. So there are things that we call a daily scrum, and the daily scrums are really simple. It's like, what did I do yesterday? What am I doing today? And what are the things that are blocking me from success? And retrospectives are another ceremonies where we take a look back and said, what went well? What didn't go well? And what do we need to improve? Very simple questions. But if you spend the time, if the Scrum Master did a great job of facilitating this activity, it really helps the team to really reflect into work that they're doing on a daily basis. So there's this constant communication and interaction with the teams. And also at the end, they said, okay, we're finished after a 2-week sprint. This is what we've done. And how did we do? You know, how are we doing? And how will we get better from that? One of the things that happens a lot with teams is that there are distractions in the team, distractions outside of the team. And the Scrum Master needs to ensure that the teams are not distracted by other demands for their time and energy. Sometimes teams become really good at this, and then they become complacent. Hey, you know, we have done great work for quite some time now. We don't need to do and push ourselves as much. And so that is critical for the Scrum Master to say, yes, great, you provided, you know, a certain amount of value. Now let's see if we could go a bit more. And maybe increase by 1%, maybe increase by 10%, but that's an opportunity for the teams to commit to, you know, those type of requests. And basically it helps the team to just get through those values and principles. And it's not really get through. Well, let me restate that. It's more that it allows the teams to really embody those values and principles, because they're really important. And if the teams begin to think in terms of those values and principles, it makes it easier for them to be able to respond to change. Now, the Scrum Master has an ecosystem, a place where they get to hang out and interact with others. And it begins with the collaboration with the product owner, and at times where they could help them with the Scrum framework and practices, but also with helping them to refine the backlog. They become a person who could provide advice and guidance in terms of the backlog and how it's defined. Now, there's certain things called dependencies that everyone knows, that if you're building software, you're building any products, you have a dependency in others. We have a meeting called a Scrum of Scrums, and that Scrum of Scrums is really where you have a dialogue between 2 teams, right, or the leaders of those 2 teams. It could be multiple Scrum Masters gathering to understand what are the dependencies that we have that could impact each other. And they have that dialogue, and that meeting is really short. It's 15 minutes long. And if there's anything more to discuss outside of that, then you could have an additional meeting. But the point of that 15-minute meeting is to really get together and describe dependencies and risks. Now, the Scrum Master also plays a critical role in sharing knowledge and facilitate certain meetings with the stakeholders, like the sprint review, where they begin to provide input and insights into sometimes what's going on. In the sprint review, the Scrum Master is more in a facilitative role, but there are also sometimes where the Scrum Master may need to connect with stakeholders and give them more feedback, different types of metrics. And also, the Scrum Master is a coach. They provide coaching for development teams to make sure that they are aligned and they're embodying the Scrum Framework and its values and principles. Now, when I look at who are great candidates for Scrum Masters, so servant leadership, people who provide servant leadership, people who are willing to serve others and to ensure that they can be successful in their endeavors. Also, they make sure that they facilitate engagement through the Scrum process. And if you have ever had an opportunity to observe or participate, you would find out that in the Scrum framework and its process, there's a tremendous amount of engagement and interaction between team members and even between other teams to ensure things could get done. And it needs some level of facilitation for that to happen. They remove impediments, things that are really blocking the team from success. And active listening is really a critical part of this, because since you're not empowered or you're not in this person in a position of power, you have to be able to understand what people are asking for and understand their needs and wants, and to be able to translate that into actions that would help to remove impediments and really help them to provide the greatest value. Now, there's a series of certifications that are available for a Scrum Master. And so the Scrum Alliance has the Certified Scrum Masters, the CSM. SAFE has their SAFE Scrum Master and their SAFE Advanced Scrum Master. PMI has the Agile Certified Professional, the PMI ACP. Scrum.org has the Professional Scrum Master 1, 2, 3. IC Agile has the Agile Project Manager. So as you can see, there are several certification bodies. These are different tests that you could take. Well, for CSM, you need to go through a couple days worth of training. I think the same thing with PMI ACP, and the same thing with SAFE and IC Agile. So there are just great opportunities where you could get out to these organizations, learn more about how you could become a Scrum Master and especially a certified Scrum Master. Now, let's look at a simple question. So we group and interact today, and we're going to ask these simple questions. We want to identify the people in the Scrum Master ecosystem. So is it A, other teams, B, stakeholders, C, product owners, D, development team, or E, all of the above? Who participate in the Scrum Master ecosystem? So the importance of this ecosystem is that you could see that there are many different stakeholders or many different groups who need the support and help of the Scrum Master. The Scrum Master makes it a lot easier if they can facilitate how those groups interact and really listen to what their needs are and help to support their group. So how are we doing, Alexa? Everyone is listening. So yes, all of the above. The Scrum Master ecosystem consists of other teams, stakeholders, product owners, and the dev team. So let's move on. Now, one thing that when we look at the Scrum Master and their engagement is that we're looking at the mindset of how do we measure, evaluate, own, and respond. And they're really helping the team to do this. And so what we like to get to is where the Scrum Master is really facilitating and enabling the team to take on this type of practice. We want the teams to really be more responsive, to focus on measuring outcomes that are actionable. I know some people we use this measurement in the Scrum practice of story points, and some people hang their hats in that. For me, as I'm coaching teams, my focus is less on story points and more on how many stories are you actually creating. And I even like to go to another level above that, is how many features are you really building? If you recall from the last time, the structure of how we organized work is that we have epics, which are really big, we have features, and then we have stories. And then story points, it's really just a reflection of size and effort, or sometimes just, a relative sizing that's used. But I like to measure outcomes that are actionable. We help the teams to evaluate to determine next steps. So if we made a commitment to complete 5 stories in a sprint and we only did 1, we have to take a step back and say, well, what happened? And this is how we leverage the retrospective as a ceremony for us to really reflect and said what went well, what did not work, and what needs to improve. So if we only did 1 and we committed to 5, there's an improvement needed there. And this is the work of where the Scrum Master helped to evaluate and work with the teams to evaluate what do we do next. The other thing is that the Scrum Master helped the teams to own the tough situation, because really they made the commitment to get that work done. And it's really their job to speak up if they have impediments during the daily Scrum. If they're having difficulties, if they don't understand something and they need more support from the product owner or some other team. And so you try to make sure that the teams take ownership of this level of work. Now, we want the teams to respond with innovation. Think of different ways of how we get out of some of these tough positions as where we're building software, building products. The role of the Scrum Master also is, when things are good and bad, we have to encourage the team. And so we have to look at what are the strengths of the team. And so the Scrum Master is constantly evaluating through the daily Scrum, through observations, through the sprint review, through retrospective, what are the strengths of the team? How do we give them feedback if needed to make sure that it's constructive and it's more helping them to find a path forward as opposed to tearing them down. We help the teams to discover how to learn fast and not get stuck. And we encourage to take some risks, take some small risks. It's okay to fail in the practice of Agile, but we want you to learn fast. And when we say learn fast, is that, okay, yes, we just failed. So what did we learn from that? And how can we not repeat the same mistake again, or go through that same experience again? So it's important that we look at experiences, evaluate them, and take ownership and come up with an innovative way of responding. We use metrics, and we just talked about measuring for outcomes. We want to use metrics that show growth areas that we could grow into, or areas that we could become better. So it's really important that the Scrum Master continues to encourage the teams when they're in good times or bad times, celebrate the good times and celebrate the bad times. So it's always time for a celebration. Now, the Scrum Master also protects the team. We manage disruption from non-team members, but I would also say that we also manage disruption from team members, because that is also a possibility. Where someone within the team can be very disruptive, and there are actions that we may need to take as a Scrum Master, where it could be, a dialogue with that person. It could be a dialogue with the team and that person, which sometimes it's a lot better, so that it becomes a team thing, and then help those individuals to either A, find a way forward within the team, or B, find a way out of the team. That's also acceptable. But also, just to let you know, the Scrum Master does not have the authority to kick anyone off a team. They have the ability to influence that change, but they do not have the authority to kick anyone off a team. We want to make sure that we limit work to the team's capacity and their constraints, because if a person could only do so much work within an 8-hour period, you try to say, hey, do not try to take on 12 hours worth of work within a day. Because you have meetings, you have different activities that are going on, you need to have time to think and innovate. So we try to manage the capacity in such a way that in my practice, I said you have about 6.5 hours per day of actual valid work time. And some people may go down and say, well, sometimes it's only just 6 or 5 hours, and that's okay too. But you have to at least understand that there are constraints and people have limits. And we should recognize that and make sure that the team are not trying to take on way more than they're capable of. And that's a good thing about Agile. You get to look, if you're measuring appropriately, you get to look at what we call a velocity. How much work can a team build throughout each sprint? And then you start to understand constraints. We need to guard against complacency. And this is really easy to do. I work with teams of very experienced and senior people where they get to a certain point and then, we don't want to do stand-ups. Oh, we don't need to do retrospectives. Oh, we don't need to do sprint reviews anymore. And we get out of the good habit. They forget what got us there in the first place for us to be a great, highly productive team. And that happens. I mean, hey, when I'm working out, I forget about that. How did I lose 10 pounds? Well, yeah, I got up and did the exercise. And when I stopped doing that, then the 10 pounds return. Like, wow, yeah, just got to reflect on that. And we remove impediments to progress, making sure that we can move forward. So this is the great work of a Scrum Master, and they're facilitating the team success. We believe that continual learning is important in order for teams to get better. Important to encourage growth through new learning skills. And a common thing that I've instituted where I am currently is a 2-hour learning Friday. 2-hour learning Friday, people may look at that like, geez, 2 hours per week. Yeah, it's really important to help teams find a space where they can learn together as a team, or they can learn as individuals. I have one person who is go to Toastmasters to work on his leadership and communication skills. So it doesn't have to be limited to just work within the office, but it should be knowledge that can help that individual or team to become better. Sometimes we have individuals who come in and speak about different topics, or even people from teams will present to a greater body of people sharing new knowledge. We want to create an environment to get better at agility. How do we inspect and adapt through different constraints, different challenges that we may encounter, and how do we take a step back and say, okay, let's think of how we're going to solve this problem and come up with innovative ways of doing that. And this is just not limited to the team, because one thing that we miss often is that we sometimes forget about the middle managers. We forget about the directors and the VPs, that we have to, as a Scrum Master, continue to build and facilitate an environment that allow those individuals to also see the value of Agile and also take on and embody those values and principles as well. So that's a great opportunity for a Scrum Master to get beyond the teams and to get into the organization. And that's where you go from being a team coach to where you become more of an enterprise coach. We have to look at what works for the team, because often one size does not fit all. And there are lots of different ideas and different guidance in how to apply Scrum and agility. But look at what works for the team to help them to own that and build their own culture. And yeah, I love learning communities. I think it's important that as we build these communities within the organization, that people have an opportunity to play back what they've learned to others. Now, we have a series of, we've been talking about these Scrum ceremonies that they have. So a retrospective is nothing more than, like I said, what went well, what did not go well, and what can we change? And we do that at the end of every sprint. And this helps the team to learn. Now you select one thing, and this is my approach. I said, every team, take one thing that you want to improve over the next sprint. So if we went through a retrospective and we found 10 different things that we found that did not go well, we would go like, okay, let's pick one. And as a team, they decide which one thing they think would be the most important that would help them to get better by executing that in the next sprint. I also think of what one thing that you've done really well that you want to amplify, and ask them to select that as well. So the teams are in continual learning mode of how to get better. On the daily stand-up, it's also, we call it daily scrums. People and teams come together and they look at what did I do yesterday? What am I doing today? And what impediments? What's blocking me from success? So now everyone is open, and we're standing up. This is a 15-minute meeting, much like the retrospective. It's a little longer, and the retrospective could be anywhere between 60 to 90 minutes. I like a 90-minute retrospective. It gives you enough time to really soak in. We have sprint planning, and if you remember from the framework that I showed for Scrum, sprint planning is where the team decide exactly how much work can I get done within a specific sprint, which is normally 2 weeks, and if there are any questions that I could ask the product owner to provide clarity and context for me. The sprint review is that meeting that we come back and we said, hey, look at what we've done. And that's a review where we demonstrate work to our stakeholders and our customers, and they get to provide feedback on the work that we have completed. But also important is in that sprint review, we also have metrics that we could demonstrate. Look at the progress that we're making. And it's not just for the customers, it's for the teams as well, so that they may have pride and ownership in the work that they have done. Scrum of Scrums is really huge if you have multiple teams who need to interact with each other. If you are building some software and you need a database, you may have to have a integration with the DBA. If you have some level of deployments, which you always have to do, you may have certain restrictions that you may have on IT operations teams that you may have to integrate with. Or perhaps you're working on a systems where you have to share information with another team, and there's some integration that you have to work that out. So we have a Scrum of Scrums that's 15 minutes long. Also, the sprint review is normally about an hour. We try to keep it to that. And sprint planning, we try to minimize that to 1 to 2 hours. And we also have release planning of when we're going to release things out to our customers, and that's roughly about an hour. So as you can see, there's these different ceremonies, and I didn't list all of them because there's also grooming that takes place in there, where there's at least 7 or more different ceremonies that are done throughout a 2-week sprint. That helps the team to really stay on top of what's going on. People are really locked in for 2 weeks. Very important. Now, I love the reflect to grow, which is really retrospective, which helps them to learn fast, right? I think this is very important. We celebrate what's really going well. We always investigate what needs to improve, and we decide what to change. And this is a team decision, and the Scrum Master is facilitating how we get there. I think retrospectives, in my opinion, is one of the most important ceremonies that teams could really execute throughout a sprint. Now let's go into our group interaction and see where we are. How are we doing? So we want to look at the Scrum Master helps the team by removing impediments. Is this A, true, B, false? I mean, what actions really help the Scrum Master? What action does the Scrum Master take to help the team by removing impediments? Is that truly true? And so when we look at all of the various ceremonies that are going on with teams, the Scrum Masters are constantly looking for ways to say, like, what impediments do we have? Is there something that we could help the team overcome? So let's see yes, wonderful. The Scrum Master helps the team by removing impediments. That is true. So let's move on. Trust, build trust. Trust is huge. Yeah, it's something that we need in our daily lives with how we deal with people, but it's really important for teams as they interact with each other as well. Trust, when we deliver on commitments, it helps to build trust with our stakeholders. It helps to build trust among each other within a team as well. As the Scrum Master is working through the facilitation, they have to facilitate relationship and collaboration. Conflict comes up all the time with teams. Teams are always struggling for various reasons. Now, this is a great opportunity for the Scrum Master to step in and facilitate. How do they, what are the best ways for people to discover an effective way for interacting? And sometimes that comes through playing different games and asking powerful questions and allowing the team, the individuals or themselves to figure that out. It's not for the Scrum Master just to really dictate a specific path, but it's to really help team members to find that path by going through some lessons of discovery. Great thing is that the Scrum Master also helps to lead the team's integration into the organization, because oftentimes, we start off with an initiative to do Agile, and we may do it in one software group. Well, how amazing would it be to be able to demonstrate to the rest of the organization and different departments the work that's being done? It's almost like a form of marketing. And the Scrum Master has a great opportunity to connecting with the rest of the organization and say, look, here's great things of how we're collaborating, how we're interacting, how we're delivering value in a very consistent way, how we're removing impediments and really minimizing risk and waste to the organization. So there's a great opportunity. They also help with the team's journey to achieve sprint goals. Because at the beginning of every sprint, we have this activity called sprint planning, that we start to identify these are the things that we want to achieve. And it's really by removing those impediments and really setting the teams up and ensuring that they are not complacent, that they can move forward and become better in the process. And most important is being a champion for the team. It's really a great thing when a Scrum Master could step up and really get out there and really protect your team and be out there being a great champion and a cheerleader for that team as well. There's certain other lean thinking type of ideas that the Scrum Master embodies about maximize value, right? And when delivering goals committed for the customer, they help the teams to do that, because the Scrum Master doesn't build software. They may build goodwill, but they do not build software. And so oftentimes they're there to help the team to really get to providing those committed features or stories so that this customer could get value as frequently as possible. Working with the POs, so sometimes the POs have a blind spot and they need to sometimes provide a smaller increment of work for their teams, because sometimes a product owner have never done software development or certain level of product development. They may understand markets and may not understand how to essentially actually do the building. So a Scrum Master also could help the product owner to refine their backlog. Meeting with stakeholders are critical. Oftentimes we forget that a lot of stakeholders, we crash into their world every 2 weeks with here's what we're done. And so a Scrum Master could help to ease, the achievements of the teams and represent that, to the stakeholders as more of an intro, an opening, and even to help the teams themselves to get to the point where they're able to do that on their own. And harmony is really important, as when you do teamwork, when teams are not working well together, it creates disruption. And that disruption can be very expensive and very costly. Now, we want to minimize waste. This is another lean thinking principle. We don't want to do things that doesn't add value. So you try to minimize those as much as you can, building quality into the delivery process. In the old days, I shouldn't even call it the old days, but when we use a traditional product delivery mechanism where we have one team building and one team testing, right? And we're throwing things over the wall, we're not building quality in. I mean, if you integrate those two teams to work together and collaborate, now quality is built in, because you're planning together, you're reviewing the work, you're looking at, how do we bring quality early versus looking at it at the very end. And in that way, we have quality throughout the process, because as we're going through the process of thinking and defining the work and looking at the requirements, we're thinking about quality then. As we're building, we're looking at quality. When we're finished, we're looking at quality. So that is just a constant part of our practice, which helps us to minimize waste. It also helps us to reduce rework of finished items because quality is built in. Um, and we get to start looking at, hey, how much new features do we really need versus technical debt? And I bring technical debt up because it happens. Even with the teams that have the greatest quality software, we're going to have technical debt. It's just, par for the course. It just happens. And it could be just a shift in technology that all of a sudden you're out of compliance and you have to go in and make sure that your software is up to snuff, or else you may create a security hole. So it's really creating that balance and helping the product owner to understand that it's important to make sure that we balance between features and technical debt. The third lean thing that I think that is important for the Scrum Master is to enable effective flow. Right. I mean, if you have ever walked in or had the experience of being in an effective flow state, it's really awesome, where you're able to deal with change, you're able to, provide value, you'll be able to identify risk areas, integration with people is really great. I mean, this is the thing that we talk about, effective flow, where you're helping the teams to embrace change, and it does not create a tremendous amount of friction. All of the ability to communicate well with individuals and teams, that's happening, and we're not having miscommunications. Work is well prioritized. We know exactly what's the number one thing and what's the number 10th thing to do, and we're not working on the 10th thing versus the number one. We're doing number one first and then number two. So flow is happening. Our customers are engaged. They're aware of what's going on. Now, courage, it's one of those things that people really ever speak about in the Agile practice. But yeah, I mean, courage is important. And a lot of time as a Scrum Master, you need that to be able to direct people and direct teams to get to the place of the greatest value. Sometimes you have to say no to requests that may harm the team. You may have to say that to the PO is, no, we can't do that. That is not, the maximum thing that we could do right now. And also you may encourage the team to be able to say no. No, we can't do that because that's way beyond our capacity, and we're going to fail. And so why create a failure point and create waste when you could really stand up and say, let's think of a different way of approaching this. So saying no is really important, and it's hard to say oftentimes in most organizations. Being able to tell the team when things are not really going well. Geez, guys, we're struggling here. We need to get better at this. So let's work together to figure out how to get there. Sometimes it's removing an unproductive team member. This is where oftentimes team members have managers, line managers, and where you have to build rapport and relationship with those managers and say, how can we help Johnny to get better in a certain areas? Right now he's been really unproductive, and it's really been disruptive to the team. So we may need to find a way of coaching that individual outside of the team so that they could be the most productive that they can be and not disrupt the team. And really just dealing with unplanned daily activities that happens. How do we respond to change and get that done? So here's our third group interaction. So the Scrum Master helps the team to minimize waste when there's a balance in features and technical debt. Is this A, true? Is this B, false? Often, most organizations, they want to build new things. Let's keep building, keep adding new things. But often, they're unwilling to look at technical debt and really step in and say that we have to create capacity and awareness to really address technical debt. Wow, people have come back already. This is awesome. So the Scrum Master helps the team to minimize waste when there's a balance in features and technical debt. Well, A, true. 97% says that is true, and that is true. Let's keep moving along. So let's summarize what what you learned today, on the knowledge that I've shared with you today, is that the Scrum Masters, they facilitate team progress. They remove impediments that limit success. They build trust with other teams and the PO, and even within the team themselves. They own the Scrum process, and they support creative, engaging teams. And this is a huge responsibility for an individual to take on, to not be in a position of authority, but be in a position of influence, where they can influence the team and others to get better and achieve the goals of the organization. So, do we have any questions at this time that I may be able to answer based on the information that I just shared?
Yes, so we do have a few questions.
Okay.
This one is, I see a Scrum practice useful only in software development activities. Can you please expand on that?
Well, I think that's a false assumption. There are many organizations who's using Scrum and variations of Scrum, um, in marketing, in HR, in certain operational activities. I mean, you could use it in nonprofits. I mean, it's just a framework. And if you could, everyone has work to do. And the best thing to do is to know the priority of the work that has to get done. I mean, it's interesting. People have used Scrum as a framework to plan a Thanksgiving dinner for a large family, and even to do it in the community themselves when they're trying to feed maybe 1,000 people. Right? And so what's the priority? What are the things that we have to get done to ensure that we could feed 1,000 people during Thanksgiving? Well, yeah, I mean, when you think about it, that's a backlog. Now, I could put a group of people together who are going to make that meal, prepare the room, and you could go on and beginning to see the flow of work where people are planning. And so maybe my sprint isn't 2 weeks, maybe my sprint is one day. Right? And you could do that. Just to let you know, you have the permission to do that. Or your sprint is just 1 week. So there's a flexibility in being able to use the framework to solve any problem and deliver any value. And also, you can also do small changes to the framework to suit what you're doing, just to let you know.
Great, so we have a couple more. I have
Mhm.
no experience or knowledge of Scrum. Can you please give me an example of metrics to be used?
Um, the key thing that I look at is in Scrum as metrics is committed versus delivered. And so, like I said, we have things. I mean, I think people know what features are. I mean, if I'm building a car has a door, it has a seat. Those things are themselves features of the car. So one thing, if you make a commitment to get a certain number of features done, you plan that. Now, at the end of the time box, which is what we call a sprint, let's call it 2 weeks, how many did I really deliver? I committed to doing 10, I delivered one. That's not a very good ratio, right? I mean, that's only 10%. I mean, if I committed to doing 10 and I delivered 10, that's 100%. So you could begin to see what actions that are needed by just a simple metrics like that. So that's one thing that I look at. The other metric that I look at is the number of defects that are being produced, quality. If I'm producing lots of defects, it means that I have lots of rework, which means I'm creating lots of waste, right? And I'm walking into a lean principle of minimizing waste, which impacts my flow and really diminish the amount of value that I could provide to a customer. So as you can see, those two key metrics is just really, how effective am I being with producing quality value for my customers?
Great. This one says, do you see Scrum in conflict with traditional project management, especially when PM is plan it all out versus the engineering deciding what to do as they go?
Um, there is a conflict because there are two different ways of thinking. Um, you know, Having the experience of being a traditional project manager, yeah, we try to get the teams to plan out the work from start to end, which really doesn't make any sense. Um, it's okay to have milestones, All right, and so every month or every quarter, we would like to hit these milestones, but they're just milestones, and they shouldn't be defined by a project manager or anyone else who's not doing the work. People may look at the broad picture and said, we want to build a car. Okay, well, how do we, after we go through some level of design, how do we really build a car, and how do we really build that on a daily basis? So the people who are doing that work is best equipped to provide that input. And doing it in an incremental fashion gives you an opportunity to respond to change. And if there are impediments, you could take care of those things right away versus, in my experience, working as a traditional PM, is that we would build all of this software and then throw it over the wall to QA, and then QA would send it back and forth. And essentially, next thing you know, time is up and we're over budget, right? We've under delivered, and customers are unhappy. In the Scrum and Agile way, we have the ability to engage our customers frequently. Because, what's really interesting is that I remember those days when we would, have customers come in maybe every 3 months. Now we have customers who can come in every 2 weeks. That's a huge difference to get that level of feedback frequently to make the right adjustments as needed to be successful.
And a follow-up question to what you just answered is, isn't that in conflict with stakeholder planning, budgets, and vision? And how do you reconcile that reality?
Well, stakeholder budget, vision, and planning, everything is driven from a vision, right? The stakeholders may have a vision of what they may want to accomplish, and hopefully they've done their due diligence by talking to the customers. And if that's the case, we know customers are not static, right? So if a series of stakeholders have a vision of what they want to get done based on customer feedback and input, then it's easy for the teams to look at, what is the budget to do that? Because if you have 10 people working in your organization and they're full-time employees, you know exactly what it's going to cost for the year for those employees, right? If you have 10 people at $100, and I'm just being ridiculous about that. So, let's call it $1,000. That's what it's going to cost you operationally from a budget perspective. If you're going to augment those those individuals with additional consultants, then perhaps you set up a 25% or so, amount of dollars that you want to put in there. But that is your budget. These are fixed resources, right? And given their capacity, that's all you could build. And so at some point, the leaders, if they're good leaders, they would really take a realistic view of that and go like, this is what I have. This is what the constraint is. If I want more, I could buy more capacity by paying more money to have more consultants. But it's in my best interest to have frequent interactions and feedback from the team so that I know exactly where I am. So I'm not waiting 9 months to know that I'm not going to make it. If I could look at this every 2 weeks, I know exactly what's going on. Even if I skip and I go every other sprint just to check in as a stakeholder to say, let me see where they are and what am I really getting value. To me, that's really being responsible. Thrown it over the wall and said, go build this and I'll come back and talk to you in 9 months. To me, that's not responsible leadership. And, stakeholders who are doing that are really not doing their organization. They're just not serving their organization's best interest by doing that. And that's my opinion based on my experience.
Okay, and last question. What happens to items left on a backlog which have not been completed but don't form enough story point for a sprint?
What happens to items that are left in a backlog that wasn't committed to by the team? Well, it's up to the product owner at that point in time. What do they want to do with those things? Is it going to add customer value? I don't know. And so that's the question that the product owner needs to look at in the backlog and says, okay, what do we do with this work? Is it really necessary? And if it is, then, they asked the team and said, here's the priority of the work to be done. Go get that done. And you let me know, how much effort and activity it will take to complete that work. So as you can see, it's not, it's a community, it's an ecosystem, right? You have stakeholders, your product owners, scrum masters, and other teams working together to provide a value, whether it's software, whether it's a medical device, whatever it is that's being produced. You need that level of collaboration and teamwork to get things done.
That's it for questions.
All right, that's it for questions. Good. So let me tell you about an organization one of my organization called knowledgeshare.org. We're out there, we're providing new knowledge, training, coaching, trying to help people to take ideas from concept to cash. Check out knowledgeshare.org. Actually, it's the place that I also blog. And so a lot of the questions that you pose today, sometimes I take them and throw them out there and provide a different twist as a response. So you could get out to knowledgeshare.org and look for Knowledge Share with Dr. Dave, as I think that's the blogging link, and you could really just get in there and start sharing your own ideas and concept, or even posing more questions if you want to. Just finished my Agility Leadership card. So these cards are learning cards for leaders, for things to look at. They could be used for in many different ways. If you're a Scrum Master, you could use it for planning. If you're a presenter, you could use it as an icebreaker for topics. If you're doing lean coffee, it could also be there for topics and retrospective meetings, just having dialogue. So, we have these cards that I produce here. This is volume number 3. You should check them out. It's, nominal cost to get one. So just go to agilityleadership.com to get that information. My book is Transforming Your Leadership Character, The Lean Thinking and Agility Way. This is available on Amazon. Also, I am maybe 2 months away from finishing my next book, which is something that I call Elastic Minds. And hopefully when that come out, I'll probably start pinging you guys to see if you guys are interested to start doing a pre-order on that book, get an early copy. I run a nonprofit where we teach high school students agility and innovation. We teach them technology. This past summer, we gave them insights into doing mobile application development, and we also taught them how to start a business and how to build resumes and be prepared for the job market. So we work with high school students doing that, and it's called 5saturdays.org. Please feel free to go and donate. We're trying to stand up another location in another city. Your support would be really helpful. Also, you could come out and check out my podcast on grokshare.com, or find me on Knowledge Share with Dr. Dave on iTunes and Google Play as well. Just feel free to go to knowledgeshare.org, tweet with us at Twitter at knowledgeshare, and blog with us at knowledgeshare.org. Coming up next month, we're talking about the teams now. So we went from the product owner, went to the Scrum Master. Now we're going to talk about the team and how they take ownership of deliverables for September. So feel free to register for that opportunity. And Alexa, you go, girl.
Great. So take back presenter rights here.
Mm-hmm.
So just a quick note on PDUs. You'll automatically receive your PDU certificate via email. And for further questions, you can contact me at alexa.ortega-mendoza@projectinsight.com. You'll earn 1 PDU for each webinar session attended. To register your PDUs, you can go to pmi.org and log in as a member of PMI. Then select your course or training and input all the info that you see below. And for those of you on social media, I'd like to invite you to follow, like, and subscribe to our social media channels. Our handle on Twitter is @ProjectInsight. You can also find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube for the latest in PI and project management news. In our Project Insight community, you'll find many recorded videos and webinars for you to watch and learn from. You can sign up for your next project management webinar or check out the rest of our webinars by visiting our webinar calendar to register for as many as you'd like. And that's all we have for today. We'd like to thank Dr. Dave for a great seminar, and of course thank our audience for your time as usual. and we hope to have you on board for our next webinar. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you, Alexa.